Australians of Reddit, what is the scariest encounter you've had with one of the native animals? I had just come home after a long bicycle ride. I took my shoes off and just forgot to bring them inside afterwards. 2 days later I was about to go on another bicycle ride, so needed my shoes. I put my left one on with no problems, but felt something a little squishy when putting my foot into my right shoe. I immediately took my foot out to discover it to be covered in at least 100 baby spiders, and a larger redback spider came scuttling out of the shoe. Don't leave your shoes outside, or at the very least check them, unlike me. GAHHHH nightmare fuel. I was driving on a straight and sealed road through barren land and had not seen anything on the road or to either side for about half an hour when I had to decelerate heavily to avoid driving into a group of half a dozen emus who were startled and who scattered in all directions. I think you mean they took military action and stealthily dispersed as the enemy approached from the south. They never signed a declaration of peace. The war rages on for the evasive emu population. Came home from work and went to step outside to enjoy the garden when I noticed an intense buzzing. I look down and there's a spider wasp and a huntsman spider having a Godzilla, King of the Monsters showdown, wrestling all over the patio area. The spider wasp stung the huntsman into submission and dragged it over to a hole in the wall. I later learned that the spider wasp lays her eggs in the barely living body and uses it as an incubator. Nice. In another huntsman incident, the one I keep in my garage dropped into my lap from the sun visor in my car as I reversed out of my driveway. I screamed for a bit before scooping him up and popping him back in the garage. I warned him not to get in my car again. Anyone watching would have found a grown man lecturing a freaking huge spider a bit weird. I do generally like them though, hence not killing it. I've also been chased by an emu while cycling a few times. They're freaking deranged. While I was mowing, saw a snake. Thought it was a red-bellied black snake. Get them all the time. So I took a stick and hit the ground near it to scare it off. Freaking thing arced up, hissed and charged at me. I took off. It was a tiger snake. They're aggressive bastards too. Had one rear up at me when I was looking for my ball at the golf course one day. I let him keep it. Lived in the outback. Was just minding my own business walking past the local cinema and a 6-foot emu came running out from behind a tree and nearly knocked me down. Scared the absolute crap out of me. Follow up. Emus were not supposed to be in the township. There was a fence to keep them out, so town services had to forcibly evict it. They achieved this by driving up close to it, throwing a noose around its neck, quickly winding up the windows and slowly escorting it out of town. Bad idea. They are surprisingly strong and it kicked in the whole side of the vehicle in the process. They must have been a rebel faction from the Great Emu War. About 5 years ago I was fully envenomated by a king brown while working on a remote mine site in the Pilbara, WA. I had all sorts of side effects from the antivenin, including blindness. It took 2 years to fully recover. Went into my shed, no lights, only to find out it was full of redbacks with webs in every corner. Now I am not scared of spiders, but holy Christ. Half a bloody dozen were crawling all over me. Lucky I had some friends that were more than happy to smack them off. My usual response to people talking about burning down a building over spiders is sure, Jan, but in your case it might actually be called for. I'm not from Australia but lived in Brisbane for a year while studying abroad. Was walking to the bars with a friend in the evening, quite dark out even on suburb city streets, so I pulled out my smartphone camera light. Just as I do so, I pan up to rustling in a nearby tree and there is a giant bat on a tree that turns around and spreads its wings like it's Batman. We ran out of there dang fast. After that, along with spider webs, I no longer walk on sidewalks into the suburbs, even during the day. We've got tons of bats near us. They like eating the fruit in our palm trees. They are really cute and fascinate our cats, lol. 3 dingus rolled up on me and my sisters on Fraser Island. Dad chased them off with a big stick before they could do anything besides make all 3 of us crap ourselves. My sister-in-law got circled by dingus there and they herded her into the water. Luckily someone was walking along and chased them off. Being swooped by magpies and even plovers. They are very territorial and annoying as frick. When they swoop they don't generally hit you but get close enough for you to hear them swoop next to your head. That's literally the worst thing about spring. Usually they won't hit you, but I've definitely been hit before and it ain't fun mayo. Hubby and a couple of mates were swimming in the dam in their jocks when someone yelled out crocodile, but it was an 8-foot black snake swimming out after them on top of the water. Hubby went back to the gum tree to get his clothes and the black snake had curled up next to their pile of clothes. They walked about 2 miles back home in wet jocks, barefoot. The three of them went back on the tractor with a shotgun but couldn't find the snake. He also reckons he saw a black panther in the bush, but I'm skeptical. In bed, felt something scutter over my chest, turned on the light, saw nothing. Then as I went to turn the light off, saw a giant freaking huntsman crawl under the mattress. I was so tired that I left it, but it still freaks me the frick out. Giant freaking huntsman, just left it. I love how casual that is. I would be stripping to my undies, smearing ketchup war paint on my cheeks and grabbing my chopstick harpoon. I was swimming bathing in a river when I saw a snake get into the water a few meters away, and it was coming towards me, and it could swim a lot better than I could. Now snakes are bad enough when you can run away, but can't really do that in this situation. So I pee myself as the snake passed beside me and got out of the river on the other side, and then I decided swim time, and really all time in the bush, was over. The snake passed beside me and got out of the river on the other side. We can build bridges. Jordan. Sorry for not having opposable thumbs. Jesus Christ, thank you for triggering this wonderful childhood memory that I had joyfully buried deep into my subconscious until this moment. One of my childhood friends lived on a big farm in WA, and we'd spend most of the holidays staying at her place doing whatever farm related mischief 2 8-year-olds could get up to all day, then passing out like the dead. Anyway, one morning I woke up and she was sitting on the floor in the middle of the room staring at me. My immediate reaction was, what the crap are you doing? She pointed behind me at the biggest goddamn huntsman I had ever seen, a few inches from my head, just relaxing on the wall having a grand old time. I asked her why the frick she didn't poke me and get me out of bed and preferably to another planet, far away from that monstrosity, and she replied, because a minute ago it was on your face. I caught a fish once while fishing down on the wharf on the Sapphire Coast, a kind of creature which when plumbed from the depths is an affront to God. Its existence was distressing. It was black. Blacker than the darkest black hole. Dead pixels on a monitor. The darkest depths, and I cannot stress this enough. Black. It had eyes which bulged outward like black orbs of despair. No pupils. No iris. No reflection off the surface. Just an imposing black. The only exception was vertical stripes in its sides. Remembering it makes me cringe. The stripes were a matte, uranium, vomit, poison, zombie flesh, decay green. Below its eyes it had a mouth which gaped as wide as its body, and inside it was blacker than the darkest night. The final feature was its spines. They were 15 to 20 centimeters long and ran up from its back and flanks. These webbed spines were main a cm thick. The webbing wasn't part of the fish though. The webbing was the translucent brown-black sludge with the consistency of KY jelly which the fish was excreting over itself, probably a poisonous coating for the spines. Why is this scary? Because I spent 3 years afterwards trying to identify it. There was nothing on the internet or books. I went through the local fishing guides, government publications on pests, all the literature, and nothing. I don't have a photo sadly, as this was 10 or 12 years ago. There are so many nasties in Australia, some aren't documented. PS. Any NSW fisherman with a potential lead, please comment. I really wanna find out what that eldritch fuckfish was. My mother-in-law called me over to her house because she thought her cat had been bitten by a brown snake. She asked me to bring a shovel. I drove over and found the snake in the backyard. I whacked that thing as hard as I could 10 times with the flat side of the shovel. The snake reared up a couple times until it slumped into a heap, bleeding. I put the snake in a plastic bag and tied it shut. I placed it between my legs while wife drove to the vet to get the cat checked out. I brought the snake so the vet could identify if it was a brown snake. When we arrived, the vet had just completed surgery on a dog and laid the dog on the floor. They opened the bag and the snake slithered off the table onto the floor and started moving toward the dog. A nurse covered the snake with a box and got a hammer. She later smashed its head with the hammer. I seriously couldn't believe it was still alive after the beating I gave it. Now I know I should have hit it with the edge of the shovel, cutting its head. I'm not sure about your snakes, but American venomous snake heads can still be dangerous. Once a head is cut off, it can have involuntary muscle contractions that cause it to still bite. You have to be very careful. Woke up in the middle of the night and walked half asleep into the kitchen for a drink. Turned the light on and am greeted by hundreds and hundreds of baby spiders, about the size of your pinky nail, on every surface of the kitchen. There were tiny webs like streamers cascading from the ceiling, and they were coming out of every crack and crevice like a freaking horror movie. I shut the kitchen door behind me to try and stop them infesting the rest of the house and sprayed the entire contents of the 4 cans of bug spray I had. Both surface spray and flying insect spray. After the first can I had to keep exiting the room to breath, but I sprayed until I couldn't see anything moving anymore, and then contemplated going to buy more spray. I had to throw out every item of food that wasn't sealed and wash the entire kitchen contents, including the walls where hundreds of little black dots made up the mass grave of baby spider carcasses. I'm not afraid of spiders, and it's common here to often find bugs inside. We have a lot of bugs and our houses aren't generally sealed up very well, but dang, that was the stuff of nightmares. Still makes my skin crawl thinking about it. Have you considered moving to IDK, another country? I was sleeping in my bed and suddenly woke up for no reason. I looked around for a bit before noticing the largest huntsman spider I had ever seen in my life clinging to the ceiling right over my head, and as soon as I saw it I panicked and leaped out of bed, and not 10 seconds later the spider had dropped down onto my pillow right where my head would have been. That incident literally gave me arachnophobia. The thought of this happening to me makes me want to go jump into traffic. I'd say that time I took off my gumboot that I had been wearing without socks, and a redback spider crawls right out of it. I'm not even sure how I managed to not get bitten that whole time my bare naked foot was sharing a space with it in close quarters. Very polite spider. Was down at a lodge by a lake with some friends, and we brought one girl's 2 dogs. Big dogs. Briras. Anyway, it was evening and the dogs start going crazy, so we look outside to see what's going, and there's a whole mob of kangaroos. Like at least 15 all just standing in the trees near our little lodge. IDK how, but one of the dogs opened the gate and they both went running after the roos. Fully chasing them. Going wild. Barking and crap. Me and my friends had to sprint after the kangaroos to try and get the dogs back. The dogs somehow cornered them but weren't moving no matter how much we called them, so we had to go up to the roos to get the dogs. Had a stare off with one of them. Was crap scared full, thought it was gonna punch me in the face. Bloody terrifying. 2 for me. Walking through scrubland at the height of summer in flip-flops. I wasn't paying attention and almost tread on a tiger snake. Never ran so fast in my life. When I was 7 I heard what I thought was a Tasmanian devil outside my window. Turns out the blood-curdling sounds from depths of heck were actually 2 possums mating. Didn't call them thongs. Not a real Aussie. Driving on the freeway one night and I suddenly notice this huge huntsman spider walking along the dashboard, very slowly making his way closer and closer to me. He was really big too. Size of my hand. I'm not bothered by huntsmen. They're not venomous. But I didn't want it crawling out of sight and then coming up my leg, so I needed to get him out of the car. I should have pulled over, but I figured he'd just hide. So I rolled my window down, waited for him to get close, and then somehow scooped him out the window. The most dangerous thing about it was that I was doing 100 km/h while swatting at a big hairy spider. Got another spider story. I had to open my rarely used garage door and was just about to reach under for the latch when I had a rare moment of caution. I pulled it open from the outside and had a look. The latch had 5 redback spiders on it, all in the space my fingers would have slotted into. That freaked me out. I know 1 couldn't kill me, and probably 5 couldn't either, but they would have made me pretty sick. My wife stepped on a snake that got into the house, and that freaked us both out, but it was just a tree snake. They're harmless. He was probably more freaked out than us. Had a magpie swoop me once in Adelaide during nesting season. That was scarier than the spiders. Felt him brush the back of my head as he flew past, and they have bloody sharp beaks. Next story. That time a giant huntsman hit my windshield smack in the middle at 100 kph. I was swimming at the beach and was heading out on my boogie board to catch a wave. The waves were huge and the water was crystal clear. I was diving under the waves that were breaking when all of a sudden, as the next wave rose in front of me, I saw it. The biggest freaking jellyfish I've ever seen in my goddamn life. It was inside the wave, right in front of me, and I was being drawn in. I froze for a second, then just turned around and paddled like a freaking maniac. I went over the wave but just kept paddling. Made it to shore and I was done for the day. I live in Sydney, so none. Unless you count a shark alarm at Bondi Beach once. Or include huntsman spiders deciding to be in the most inconvenient places, like chilling between my car door handle, in my letterbox, perched above my shower, etc. It's just inappropriate behavior on their half. I mean, I saw a snake once on holidays, but it was just a diamond snake, not one of the deadly ones. See, I'm from the UK and if I see a snake, it's a freaking snake to me. I don't think it's one of the non-deadly ones. I'm out. Man, imagine having to always be on your toes, on the lookout for big frick-off spiders. Actual scariest. Hitting a wombat while driving. Could have seriously fricked up the car. Although fortunately for me, my passengers and the car, I hit it at 20 km/h after slamming the brakes. This still wasn't fortunate for clump of fuzz, which became a pile of blood and muscle and bones and skin on the road. Funniest, 2005, me and then GFR camping. I'm sound asleep. There's a commotion that almost wakes me up. I'm in a deep daze. A wombat has forced its way into our tent, and my ex, who was much more awake than me at this point, is kicking the heavy fuzzball to try to extricate it from the tent. She's strong, but wombats are built of solid muscle and are hard to budge. Eventually it gets the point and fricks off just as I'm waking up. Life lesson. Food is to be locked in the car always. We'd just built a new house and all the construction from the new estate had removed large amounts of bushland and so disturbed its inhabitants. Baby Dujite got inside and my mum was the only one home, so she trapped it with a bucket and her 5L wog olive oil can on top. Came home with dad expecting a freaking python the way she'd been carrying on, but it was only little. Apparently they're more dangerous because they can't control the venom. Not my own story because I haven't had much encounters except for fuckstick magpies swooping me and fuckstick magpie supporters annoying the crap out of me. Not me, but one of my good Australian friends had some emus in his backyard and he came back to the mic and said, "Frickin' emus, I swear third time I hit one with a rock this week." Me and my Canadian friend was dying after hearing this and we lost the game because of laughing. I was poking this spider with my finger really quickly, and at one point I poked it really hard and all of a sudden all these little spiders I didn't see on its abdomen exploded everywhere. I was squirming the heck out and I just ran into my house and started splashing water on my face non-stop. Another time a red-bellied black snake came into a shed and I was poking it with a stick. Snakes are actually pretty fast and it just zoomed away through all the tools and between the exit. I waited a bit and full sprinted through to the exit and closed the door and informed the owner of the shed. "You need to stop poking things." Was walking home from school along the waterfront when I came across a massive elephant seal. That was surprising, to put it mildly. Honestly, even with spider encounters and such, roos can be the most frightening when it comes to driving in any location or condition where they can suddenly leap out onto the road. Jeebus. Not mine, but my dad's story. So back when my dad was 23-24, he was living in his good mate's house and slept in the garage. Aussies, you know where this is going. So one night when he was falling asleep, he rolled over and just before he drifted off he felt this little tiny thing. He woke up the next morning sweating an ocean from his leg and his leg was also pulsating. He lifted it up to say a 6cm dead redback spider. He told his mate and he was rushed to hospital. He was there for the day being watched over on the phone with my mum the entire time. When the doctors let him go, that said any long before he got there and he would have been gone. Suiwaru, yay, redbacks are nice creatures, I guess. Pulling up a crab pot in the NT and a croc decided to have a tug of war with us. We were in a 10-foot tinny and the croc was at least 15 feet long. My family owns a beach house on a South Australian coast, Since I partly grew up there, one of the first things I learned about the ocean was from my grandpa, and it was a stern talk from him to be careful when collecting shells because of blue-ringed octopuses. They are a really venomous octopus and an anti-venom doesn't exist. I've only seen one whilst swimming, but it was a little too close for comfort. Can't remember if diamond pythons are native or not. Oh well, I'm usually a snake person. Between them and spiders I have a lot of respect for animals that eat pests. I found a garden hose in the bush out near North Arm Cove. Was a very weird place for a garden hose to be. It was strange cause there wasn't any orange connectors. No matter how hard I looked I couldn't see the ends. Heck, leaning in didn't help either. Of course the danger noodle tried to bite me. I was a lumbering oaf who had been standing over it for the past 5 minutes. But something lunging at your face? That's an ope response. I was out of there. Walked home at night. Saw what I thought was a large, jacked man standing in front of me and freaked out. Realized it was actually a very big kangaroo and calmed down and laughed. Then freaked out anew when it dawned on me that that was in fact much worse. I've had a few encounters over my life. 1. My girlfriend and I were hiking and came across hundreds of red kangaroos. While walking through, a lot of the male kangaroos were staring us down, rubbing their stomachs. We later found out this means they are pee. We ended up getting through without being attacked, but it was a tad scary. 2. Walking to school and having a magpie attack me. 3. My cat bringing a brown snake into my bathroom. I had to broom it outside. Currently residing in Melbourne, working for an insulation installing company where I climb into people's ceilings and under their floors, aka constantly running into spiders of varying degrees of size and species. Was under a floor and had a red backdrop from a bearer right onto my chest. Had a co-worker pull out a beige brown extension lead next to me and practically gave me a heart attack because I thought it was a snake. Rural Victoria. Was driving down a toll road in Sydney when I caught a movement out of the corner of my eye inside the car, and my missus in the passenger seat exclaimed that there was a huntsman on the top of my seatbelt. He disappeared into the abyss of the car. We named him Fred but never found where exactly he went. Those are some of my more memorable current encounters. I've got more as I spent 2.5 months in far north Queensland and you come across loads of critters and crawlers. The time I pulled my hand out of a puddle to find a centipede attached to it. Holy freaking crap. You just made me cringe all the way to my core. Not Australian, but at 18 I was working in the outback. We had been fighting bushfires for the day and I was driving back to our homestead for the night on my own in one of the big trucks. It was about 50k drive and was pitch black. Out of nowhere came a group of around 30 bush pigs. I hit maybe 15 of them and got 2 punctures. Changing 2 tires on a truck on your own in the middle of the outback at night was a pretty scary experience, I have to say. My family and I once came home to see a spider in the window with a span of more than 30 cm/12 inches. Even my father and I, who were usually okay with spiders, insects etc, were put off. My dad eventually got the courage to guide it out of the house. I read electricity meters for a few months out of university to earn some money. I would sometimes have to guide a spider out of the meter box. Honestly though, it wasn't the native animals that caused the problems. Getting bitten by a wasp or 2 stings like heck. My friend once went up to his car to find a snake had made it his home. He and a friend somehow coaxed it out. You should still visit Australia, though. Don't need to. I'm Australian myself. P. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.